Hey everyone, welcome to the national overview for EA. So, what is EA? It is a nation built around the Enkidu. And these are large, hairy, wild men with horns and unkempt hair, and notably no hats. It's a pretty interesting nation. It's got some major challenges, I think, but it also has some major strengths. And it plays very, very differently, in my opinion, than a lot of nations in the game, and especially different than a lot of nations in early age. There's going to be a lot of ways that you could try to play it. I'll outline some of them. I have not played this nation in a game, and sometimes you know how things will play out more, because they play out, like it's the same systems in the game. And, we know what magic paths do, and we know what spells are in those and whatnot. But sometimes there's enough, unique mechanics within a faction or enough differences about a faction that it's hard to predict how things will go. Like, how things might play out in a multiplayer setting. And I feel like with this nation in particular, if I were to play them in multiplayer, I would probably learn a lot from it, and I would be able to give you a much better guide. I have talked to a few people who've helped me kind of come up with some ideas. I've talked to Noneless, who's played them a few times, and he gave some thoughts. And I've talked with Dark Wolf and a few other people just about how the nation could play out, and kind of see what people were thinking about it. Look at some of I've tried looking at a few guides too. I think I came to slightly different conclusions than everybody, but I took little bits and pieces that I liked from what everyone said. And let's go through some of the really top level stuff. You have a lot of foreign recruit things. That's the first thing we need to get out of the way. In fact, our forts are really expensive, and a palisade is like $750 rather than 600. They take a long time to build, at least it seemed that way. Maybe it's a normal time. They look like they took an extra turn to me. And the troops we get from our palisades aren't really much better. They're a little better, but they are much better than the stuff we can just recruit out of any province anywhere on the map. We have a bunch of sacred things, like sacred mages, which we get out of forts. And we have a bunch of non-sacred mages, which we get outside of forts. The funny thing is the non-sacred mages in general are kind of better than the sacred mages. There's a place for everything, and we have good sacred mages. I don't want to say we don't, but we have really good non-sacred mages. So, what do you do? So I'm going to... The other thing that we have to kind of just get out of the way, right? So because we have a lot of foreign recruit stuff, we don't really need a lot of infrastructure. And because some of our foreign recruits, we also have swamp things in particular that are really good. We also have some aquatic stuff, but the swamp stuff in particular is better than a lot of the other things we have in the nation. So given that, you actually kind of want to fort a swamp. And I know that's going to sound ridiculous, but I think you do. So I don't know, you're just not going to be building a lot of forts. And this is coming from a player that really likes forts. I don't want to overbuild forts because I want to be making units. But, if it's late game or something, it's kind of, and I have money, it's nice to do. And I feel naked without forts. But, look at these guys. They're basically naked too. So I think that's how you have to play this. You play this nation a little naked, and you roll with it. There are bad things that come with that, though. People can rampage through your land pretty quickly. You don't have forts to retreat to or attack out of. You can kind of get wiped a bit. But you have some really strong things, too. I'm going to go ahead and say, I think this nation is a hard nation to play. If you're a newer player, I think you'll struggle with this, especially in a multiplayer setting. Other nations have really obvious things that you can do, like a big freaking hammer you just hit people over the head with. And, we do have some hammers and hatchets and things, but and clubs. But none of these in the game sense are like actually hammers. Like, I don't know. We kind of, this actually is kind of I hesitate to say finesse, but a little bit of a finesse nation. You can't just do a thing and then have it always work. We have some things which we'll go through which are kind of like that, but anyway, being this like foreign recruit nation that can actually slam a lot of troops, like you can make a ton of troops with this nation. You can spend money so fast. You can spend money so fast with this nation. You need so much money. The problem is we're in early age. In early age, there's no money in early age. It is such a freaking poor era. And the other thing about early age as a kind of meta is a lot of times you have really good cap-only sacreds in early age. It's probably like maybe the best. I don't know. Middle age has some really good ones too. But early age, I feel like a lot of nations are pretty much defined by their cap-only sacreds. Our cap-only sacred kind of sucks, guys. This is it. Inky's Chosen. He kind of sucks. Like, he's not horrible, right? He has okay attack and defense. He has some protection. He's kind of high encumbrance. Has no hat. This is not an elite troop exactly. Like, if these were recruited anywhere, you could maybe do a bless strat or something that could be kind of cool. But they're not, right? You only get them out of your capital. They're not a world better. There's people who recommend doing like a bless build and like trying to patch holes in these guys with the bless. Oh my God. I think that's just, it's like you're at the Grand Canyon, right? Which is this huge ravine in the United States. And you got to cross it, and you've got like a huge bale of twine, right? And you've got some slats. You're going to try to make like a freaking bridge. Like, good luck. Good luck, buddy. Right? This guy can be useful, but oh my God, you do not want... He has pretty big shoulders, it looks like, but they cannot carry the weight of this nation. So we're kind of in this era where there's a lot of good cap-only sacreds, and we don't really have a cap-only sacred that we want to bank on. You don't want to bet on your cap-only sacred against other people's, in my humble opinion. We also have another sacred. We have these guys. They have fear. They're kind of cool. They're super expensive. And guys, this is a nation that can spend a ton of money. I think there's a case to be made for these, and we can kind of theorize what that case would be. But, I mean, basically it's like putting Moss Body on them. And like quickness, right? Because they're pretty low encumbrance. Those are things we can do reasonably easily. All right. And if you're putting those spells on it, having these guys mixed into your army, I think it's reasonable. But without like buffs on them, they're a waste of gold in my opinion. But fear is pretty nice. So how does this nation play? Right? Like how do you play them? I think it's a horde nation, guys. I think this is like, think of in DE, right? If you go back and watch my Ulm game and the big Bosmod thing, right? And you remember Tartary was my war target, and they can get like really good horse cav in every province. They can't really have forts. They don't like forts, but they just like every province, they're just foreign recruiting stuff, right? And it's like a horde nation. That's, I think, what this is. This is a horde nation. Like, if you're playing around in your forts, in my humble opinion, without having played this nation before, except a little bit in single player now, and just having studied it, I think you're playing it wrong. I think this is a horde nation. Now, you have forts, and your forts can make you can spend an absurd amount of gold in your forts on troops. Like, look at this, guys. If we just slam these, okay, look, I have 1,600 gold. All right. We can spend 400 gold a turn on troops. That's a lot, right? I mean, this is a lot of gold. And then in conjunction, we can spend a fair amount of money on, like, we can buy a Gudu every turn. Like, we can spend a lot of cash in our capital. And plus, we have foreign recruit stuff, right? So, like, our best mage is foreign recruit. Foreign recruit. I don't mean like not cap only. I mean he can only be recruited. Like, we cannot get him in our capital. All right, there's no shaman here for us to get. The only way you can get him is if you build a random lab in a province, and then you get this guy. All right, he's Nature 3, Earth 2. Right, and then he can become Nature 4 or Earth 3 with another chance for getting water. And water, by the way, guys, is a freaking awesome cross path with this. Like, the water guys are no slouches, right? This is like Foul Vapors traps, thugs with Moss Body and Quicken Self, Earth Power. Like, these are good mages. However, are they cheap? Not really. They're 275 gold. They only take 2 recruitment points. What does that mean? This should be like a slow to recruit mage, but you get them not slow to recruit. I mean, they're technically slow to recruit since you can't build them in a fort and they're 2 recruitment points. It's going to take you 2 turns, but like it kind of should take you 4, is what I'm trying to say. You can spend so much money so fast with Like, I mean, look, I think I hit intern a few times in this to just pull this thing up because I wanted to see a fort get finished. But look, we can slam some dudes out here. You know, we can slam dudes here. We can slam here. We're already making these guys. We probably should switch and make these. We'll talk about all the things. But like, guys, we can spend a lot of money. Like, we can levy big armies quickly if you take scales. Big armies. Really big armies, okay? We can spend some freaking money. Problem is, in early age, you don't really get much money, right? As we were saying. So, you can see we've almost spent all our gold. Okay. So, what is this nation? It's a horde nation. We can get most, like, let's look at the quality difference. This is kind of, in my opinion, kind of the go-to for your cap-only dude. I think you can go with this hatchet guy, who's a bit more money. The hatchet, they hit really hard. And on bigger units, like smaller units, piercing damage tends to be better because you're getting rid of protection. Bigger units, slashing damage is actually a pretty good damage type. The problem, though, is these guys have crap stats, so they're going to get repelled a fair amount, especially versus like elite sacreds with a length greater than 1 weapon. So I think you probably do want to go with these guys. Interestingly, if you do Army of Giants on them, which is something trivial for you to cast, not completely trivial because it costs a gem, but they get a tiny little bit of repel. So, I mean, it's not like they have good stats for repelling, but it'll also mean they can't get repelled by length 4 things. But like, okay, where I was going with this is if you look at these guys, look at these stats, 10, 10, 9 protection, right? 24 hit points, 15 strength, 11 magic resistance. Basically, they've got a shield and they've got an 18 damage spear attack. We compare it to these guys, they have a 17 damage spear attack. Basically the same stats, right? Like 2 lower protection. Okay? And 1 lower damage. Now, if you have forts up, you should probably make these. They're better. They cost the same amount of gold. These are also 16 gold. But, especially like early in the game, this is the thing, I think, something to think about. Like, I think whenever you look at a nation, you have to say, like, what are their advantages that they have that you can press? And one of the advantages that these guys have is they don't need to make infrastructure. On one hand, that kind of sucks because it's nice to have forts to retreat into. On the other hand, it's kind of fucking awesome because you can just go attack people while they're busy putting half of their money every turn into infrastructure. You're putting a quarter that much and you're just slamming troops. Now, your troops aren't great. Like, they're probably not going to trade gold for gold terribly well with a lot of other things in the era. But what if you outnumber them 2-1? Well, that might change things. That might change things a lot, right? You could outnumber them 2-1. You could have these guys with Moss Body and Quickness on them, maybe a couple of them at the front of your army, right, that are going to be helping tear through some kind of high-value targets. The other thing that's important to note is that you're like, if you think of this now as a horde nation, right, a nation which is going to be just mass producing troops out of every province, you're not going to be very greedy at all. If you're doing that, you actually have really good magic paths for buffing troops. What are the things we care most about? Well, we care most about getting their damage up. So we can trivially do Strength of Giants. We have 2 guys which can do it. One is the Gudu, and half of these are going to be Earth 2. That means with you do summon Earth Power, Strength of Giants, bada bing, bada boom. You can buff up a ton of your troops with that very trivially. The other thing is, so that's like a big area of effect thing. You can also do Legions of Steel. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, it's going to be better on these bronze dudes because they have a bit more protection. So, I mean, getting this up to to 12 is not bad. It's worth it. But it's probably, the thing is that the buffing the defense on these guys, like by a little bit, they have good hit points. So once we get into like the big late game buffs, it'll change. But earlier, like buffing the like 3 protection isn't going to matter that much. Their job is to just kill things and sort of die, right? But we need to have the numbers advantage. Like if you're trying to take a square fight with like even troops, you're in trouble. So we have a massive numbers advantage. We're slamming Strength of Giants on these guys. They hit pretty freaking hard with Strength of Giants. Like these guys with Strength of Giants are hitting for 22 damage. Right? With 22 piercing damage, that's a fair amount. Like that's nothing to laugh at. And it's not amazing, right? And you get Strength of Giants on these guys too, especially if you have like, again, you do not want many of them, right? But once you have Quickness, which is Alt 3, and Moss Body, which is Alt 3, you can cast these reasonably easily, by the way. You have, wait, who's our Nature 2? This guy, Water 2. This guy can just do Quickness, no problem, right? And these guys can do Moss Body. So I would probably bring... You could probably bring 3 of these guys for every pair of these, and you could pair of the Ishibs, and not the Galas. These Salmis. So you basically have 2 of these guys, 3 of these guys. They have high enough hit points. They should take buffing priority. So, you know, if you cast Moss Body 3 times, it should target them. And if you cast Quickness 3 times, it should target them. And then they just run forward and they're destroying stuff. They're going to be, I mean, they would get killed. You don't want your army to be too far behind them, right? But they don't trample. So you want them positioned at the front of your stack. You want them to run in, make contact. And then you want your other troops to like follow around behind. The other thing that you can do, again, this actually is trivial, because you can have these shamans who are all nature 3. So you don't even need gyms for this, right? Basically, the shamans can all do Iron Warriors on this too. And they can also cast Regen, which if we look at Regen, I forget if it's Enchantment 4, it's 3. Right, so Enchantment 3, this is something we're going for anyway, right? Because we're getting Strength of Giants, right? We want this anyway really early. So you get Regen. So now we say, okay, we're going to get 3 of these guys out of the cap, because we're going to need probably a little help for dealing with like really hard to kill stuff. We have Alt 3, Enchantment 3, which we can get to reasonably quickly. We get Moss Body, Quickness, and Regen on them. Is that these are not, like they would still get killed if they were alone, but they're not alone. They're leading your army into combat. So, yeah. I think that could work pretty good. I mean, the other thing you could look to do is like Wave Warriors, which comes out pretty... This actually is trivial for you to cast. Especially, like, you can have these Ishibs. That's an Unsi. You can have these Ishibs. You put a Water Bracelet. So this is now not early in the game. Like, you can do this kind of earlier in the game. It's only Alt 6. But with Alt 6, it takes 2 Water Gems. You can do it later in the game with a bracelet of water and a whatchamacallit, water lens, and that'll make you water 3, and then you can just cast Wave Warriors, and you can get that on these guys. That will make these Mashushu, if they get targeted, again, they should be embedded in your army, so they're getting hit with Strength of Giants. You don't want them too far ahead. So if they get hit by Wave Warriors, and then they're running out in front of the army because they're quickened, once they start kind of charging forward. It's possible also they don't break free and you end up kind of wasting a fair bit of effort buffing them up. But yeah, but anyway, they take buffs pretty well, and they can help kind of clinch a fight for you. They can be kind of a centerpiece of an army. So, we're talking now Horde faction with like a little bit of accoutrement of like, these guys to maybe help, attract aggro, and then also maybe take out some really hard to kill targets and spread fear. That's the other thing. I wouldn't recommend doing one of these guys. Because the way fear works too, it's going to be a lot more effective once you get like 2 or 3 of them that are hitting the same troop. It just is going to spread a lot better. So, and trigger squad morale like breaks better than just one. So yeah, especially if they're not like completely surrounded. Anyhow, we're a Horde faction. We can slam dudes out of every little nook and cranny. We've got a lot. This is where I was going. We've got a lot of area of effect buffs we can do. We can do Strength of Giants. We can do Legions of Steel. These are, again, trivial. This nation trivially does these buffs, right? Legions of Steel. Okay, one second. Let me pull. Wave Warriors we can do really easily. Quickening later in the game we can do really easily. That's high in alteration. The nature stuff is ridiculous, right? So we can do Army of Giants. We can do Wooden Warriors. Like, Wooden Warriors comes out really fast. And if we're fighting somebody without access to fire magic, it's a pretty big deal. If we're fighting somebody that does have access to fire magic, we have water magic. So we can easily drop, what is it? What's the water one here? Fire resistance. Right, this is the area effect 15 one, and then we come down here, we can get Warriors of Niflheim, which grant us 5 fire resistance if we're running down alteration, which I think is something you really want to consider doing on this nation. Maybe not first, but for your first 7, I feel like you probably want to go for alteration. So yeah, we can basically slam a ton of troops, and we can get big area of effect buffs on them, all right? So, like, if you watch the Vettiheim video, where we're talking about point buffing, this is not that, okay? Like, point buffing, you're stacking a ton of really, really potent buffs, like luck and ethereal and moss body and quickness and all these things on, like, a few elite units. Like, so on Berserkers or Rimvetti or something. That is not what we're talking about. We're talking about putting in the early mid-game or mid-game big area of effect buffs, and we're putting a few of them on a lot of troops. These troops are not going to be invincible. You're not going to like run around and not take any attrition, right? They're going to still die, but they're just going to trade pretty well because you've got a ton of them. They hit hard, and they take buffs well. So you have to imagine this guy, which once you get a couple forts up, you'll stop making them so extra. We'll say this guy. Or we could use the hatchet dude. It depends on what you're fighting. If they're getting repelled, these hatchet dudes are going to suck. But like this guy, right? You have to imagine him with Strength of Giants, Wave Warriors, maybe Legions of Steel, and we can do it. Let me pull up a test game real quick. I've got this set up here. Not very perfectly at all, but I have a big PD dump from Abyssia. These guys are actually really scary. Early age Abyssia PD, because they get these guys of the heat aura, so they will put our dudes to sleep in melee. Because we don't really have... We have a few guys casting Water Ward or whatever to give us some fire resistance. Okay, so you can see these guys, I think they all got quickened, and they got Moss Body and Regen put on them. Well, they didn't all get all the things. It's probably maybe safer to just do it with 2. 3, you're kind of relying on some luck. And, these guys are pretty killy. You can see most everybody got... oh, no, that's not a Strength of Giants, dude. Did we not get enough Strength of Giants laid out? Okay, we didn't. Probably should have more Strength of Giants casters. This guy got it. I think I had a fair amount of the Fire Ward thing get cast, but like these guys, they got Mass Protection or Wooden Warriors. You'd probably want to be really careful about casting that against Abyssia, but it's a lot of guys who hit really hard. I think we have a fair number of dudes that have Strength of Giants on them, like kind of a lot, but we'd probably even want to bring more Strength of Giants casters. And these guys are just going to town. They do fatigue out because they've been fighting Abyssia shit. This guy didn't, because even though he's quickened, he doesn't have... or he has fire resistance, so he's going to be immune to that jazz. But this is the Horde. Now, this is all fine and dandy, I think, for middle game stuff. This is not like fancy. It's not like, oh my god, they can do this. Like, we brought a shit ton of mages, guys. Like, this actually is not like exactly efficient. But there's some nice things about this. We have pretty good siege strength with this army. Like, this army has I mean, even after it's been hit, we've got 700 siege strength here. They do eat a lot. We've had to put bags of wine on these guys. But yeah, so that's stuff we can do in the mid game. You have to be very careful about elemental resistances and stuff in the mid game. That is not something you have to be careful of as the game goes late. I think that's kind of what I want to spend the last part of this. Well, we've got a few. We're going to cover Pretender design and stuff, but I think that's what I want to spend part of this talking about is like. We'll go through the troops, but I think first we're going to talk about how you win the game, then we're going to go through the troops. Then I'll talk about Pretenders. But, like, how does get really good? Like, what is it that makes them really strong? Like, what are their strengths aside from just being a Horde faction? Well, the thing is, these units kind of suck on their own, but they have 24 hit points is a lot. In the late game, you're going to be very resistant to battlefield wipes. You're going to be resistant to flames from the sky. You even have decent MR, like 11's not horrible. You don't have like dark vision or magic weapons or things like that, but, you know, you've got some kind of cool stuff. But these troops take buffs real well. So like once you put Army of Gold on these guys and Will of Fates, which is tricky because we're not really an Astral Nation, but in Mass Regen, which is trivial for us, and Gaia's Blessing, which is trivial for us, well then we're looking at these guys having all their resistances, having 20 protection, well, you know, on top of whatever they've already got, so it's going to be like 25 protection. We can also do Weapons of Sharpness pretty easily on this nation, and these guys hit pretty hard, so they'll start tearing through things. Like, we have basically essentially recruit anywhere Earth 3s, right? So these guys, you throw Earth Boots on them, they cast Earth Power, and then they can do Weapons of Sharpness. So, like, late game, you actually have pretty scary stacks that are not, like, it's just gold. Right, like you don't really need gems hardly for the stacks except for just the battlefield buffs you put up. Like you're not even really needing boosters. But yeah, I mean, honestly, just these cross paths give you so much. We got Mass Regen, we got Army of Gold, we've got Gaia's Blessing, we've got Weapons of Sharpness, we've got Strength of Giants. There's scary stuff we're gonna have to fight in the late game potentially though. Like you might have to fight like Wailing Winds and stuff. That's gonna be annoying. Fog Warriors is gonna be really annoying. So yeah. The other thing is we don't really have good researchers. I mean we do, but I guess we'll talk about that as we talk about all the units because we have some, but like these guys certainly aren't great researchers. 275 gold for a 16 research mage in Magic 3. Yikes. But yeah, anyway, we can have pretty scary Doom stacks, and we can potentially have a lot of Doom stacks. We're really just going to be limited by the amount of money we have. I feel like even given all that, you're not going to Doom stack with this nation as hard as other nations. Like nations with a ton of demons or like sacreds, like a bajillion sacreds. They're probably still going to be able to doomstack harder. Or nations with like better battle magic, they'll be able to doomstack better. But we'll be able to do pretty good. Like, we're not bad. I think the thing is, we can field a lot of armies. We also, okay, let's talk about the units. We got to talk about it, because I'm keep wanting to say, okay, well, we have this unit who can do this, this unit who can do that, and we just have to go through them in order. Okay, so we have the Gala. She's an Elegist, which means she's effectively a Holy 3 for calling back your god. Okay, there's another thing I should have mentioned at the beginning, which is your god, when you call them back, they don't lose paths or Dominion candles or anything. And we can call them back fast with Elegists, right? So you can have a god that you can basically suicide and call them back. I don't recommend that, but it's nice. It does make it more valuable to invest more into your god. She's also, a nature one, so she can do swarm and protection and those sorts of buffs. And with Holy One, she has not horrible upkeep, so research efficiency isn't horrible with her in Magic 3. The Selmy is basically the same thing, except she can do Moss Body and Frozen Heart, which is really nice. And with a gem, she can do things like quickness. And a bit better research. Definitely a good mage. I think the way to think about this one, though, is this is better at like buffing elites with Moss Body. Not really good for blanketing out buffs. Like having a couple Moss Bodies scattered around your hordes, I don't think it helps much. Right, so like these are very good for like buffing thugs, buffing gods, buffing Mashushu, Mashusu, however you say that. Yeah, she's good at buffing elites. Maybe if you have sacreds, she can buff them. That can be pretty cool. But yeah, not good for this like horde blanketing buffs approach. Then we have the Gudu. These guys are really, really good. So they're sacred, so they're kind of efficient researchers in terms of upkeep. They're obviously nothing to write home about for research efficiency. But they come in two very useful varieties. They're either Earth 2 or Air 2, and those are both so freaking useful. If we get Storm up, I can never remember what it takes to cast Storm. Yeah, so we'd have to find our way into an Air 3. We have a summon we can get that's an Air 3, but you need to be Air 3 to get them. That's a little bit of a thing. But if you have Storm up, they can do summon Storm Power, and they'll become Air 3s, and they can just drop either Air Elementals, or they can drop Thunder Strikes. Very good. The other thing about the Air 2s is they can Cloud Trapeze, and they have enough hit points with a fair bit of gear they can Thug. And you could come up with some pretty clever gear combinations to Thug with them. They're not going to be like by any means the best thugs in the era that can Cloud Trapeze at all, but they can do it, and that gives you a lot of mobility. And it means you can potentially pick off armies as counter rating, and so having a few of these guys with gear that can Thug, it's going to be nice. And you are a nation that can easily make hammers, so with hammers you can have more efficient Thug gear. It's okay. I think this is like cloud trapezing these guys is like a special forces tool. It's not like the hammer you're going to hit people with, but it's an important tool to have in the bag. But, these guys also make great counter raiders. Throwing out a few elementals when people aren't expecting it are great. And if you're going up high conjuration early, which I think is definitely a path you should consider for your first 5, because it's going to give you so much. It's going to give you air and earth elementals here. It's going to give us Gaia's Strength of Gaia, which is really nice for our shamans, gets them up an even higher nature path, and it gives us Howl. So we get a lot of things from it. And we also get water elementals too. So we have a lot of good things we can do. The earth ones are amazing. These are going to be blanketing your armies in earth buffs, specifically Strength of Giants. It's really good. I would consider just building these guys out of your capital the first year. Because, especially if you're running up Conjuration first, these other ones, which you may think of as like efficient researchers, they're not going to be very useful in a first war. These guys are going to be able to drop like, oh no, we have elves running me or whatever. Well, I hope you like every single one of these guys is going to be just pouring out like big size 5 elementals or size 6 elementals once they get Conjuration 5. So these guys are really good. The Ishibs, we've already talked about. Water 2 is a good path. You can use it for a lot of buffing. Water Air, this lets you do like Amulet of the Fish, Freezing Mists. Water Earth, I can't think of much useful there. Water Nature, you can do Clam of Pearls and stuff. We already have plenty of Water Natures. There might be some other things like if you're sending these guys underwater as thugs, these paths have other particular meanings, like, you know, Earth's probably the best for going underwater, but Nature could be good too, because with a gym you can do personal regen. Or maybe do a combination, you send an Earth into Water one, they can do Iron Warriors and put a Thistle Mace on them, maybe do regen, I don't know. They're fine. I think the main purpose of these guys actually is just the water path. I think these cross paths are like much less important, but I could be wrong. However, with getting especially with a water bracelet and some gems, quickening, wave warriors, quickness, these guys are really, really good. You also have an army that can be super combatanted. And one of the ways to counter super combatants is to have flying dudes, like this guy casting flight on himself, right? Buffed with quickness. Hello with Shib. So you have these guys in like a back corner. They're going to buff like 2 of these air random dudes, right? I mean, you can have other things. Like you could have this... I'm sorry. You could have this guy cast... Okay, I could just do it in the game. We could actually have this person do it, right? You take like this... and this, and then we could get, we'll go through all these units here, but these guys are actually really good berserkers. They're berserker 4. Oh, we would need a, no, it would be take an air random or whatever. So we'll just move the guys here who are going to do it. And I think I have a couple of them somewhere, don't I? I guess I moved them off with an army. Yeah, but we imagine we had 2 of these guys. Well, we'll pretend these 2 are these bone dudes, right? You put some gear on them, great sword of sharpness, some, I don't know, whatever weapon you think will be best. You put them back here, right? And then you put these guys behind, and they're gonna buff both tiles. This guy will do Gift of Flight ×2, because Gift of Flight is notoriously bad at targeting. So you have to basically plan on buffing anybody within 10 range of you. So if you do this, you need to have your army not anywhere near this quadrant, or he'll Gift of Flight them. And then you do quickness ×2, which I don't have researched. It's Alt 4, I guess. So you do that ×2, and then you have these guys do hold attack. And then you can also cast like protection or whatever it is you want to cast. But they will be able to jump in and, you know, like super combatant kill something. Hopefully they can jump in and then peck away at the super combatant, because that's definitely going to be something to consider. So back to the units. These guys mostly for buffing, right? And they can paint out big water as a path with big area of effect buffs, but you can also use them for like quickness and stuff early for counter thugging. So that's the Ishib. They're also holy too, which is important. One of the things we need to come back and talk about is Dominion management. Then we have the Into and we have the NC, and they're both holy 3, and they're both slow to recruit out of your capital only. These ones have a chance at, really, I can't think of the amazing paths here for this one. Like, the Shaman's kind of just better, except you can get an air random here. And Earth Air is kind of cool. Like, you can do, you know, you can forge Dancing Shields, and you can do Rain of Stones, but Rain of Stones kind of sucks in Dominions 5. And then we have these guys who are kind of cool. They can get Water 3. I think that's the most remarkable thing about them, aside from being Holy 3. There is an event that you can have in your capital, and you want to have both of these guys here. You get bad things that happen if you don't have one of these and one of these in your capital, I think, come the spring. And you get bonus troops, or you can get money. There's different outcomes that can happen every year in spring, I believe, or sometime, if you have both of these present. So that's something I would look to do. I think you need to have story events enabled, or minor story events enabled for that to happen, though. Like, it didn't happen in this game because I forgot to turn that on. Anyway, that's the thing. Oh, these guys are also good leaders. That's the other important thing. They're pretty darn good leaders. These the kings are. Okay, so we've been through the fort mages. Oh, these guys also bear special mention. They're tax collectors, so you can do deep raiding if these guys are leading troops. And they're defense organizers. They're also really cheap. They're 15 gold, which is remarkably cheap. They have bad leadership, even though they can carry a lot of dudes. And this kind of leans a bit into like the horde faction mechanic. But they're going to be giving -1 morale. And I don't exactly know how they coded this, like how they made this unit. But it's weird because 80 leadership, you would think you would get a bonus. You don't. Everybody that these guys lead are going to get -1 morale. Okay? That's net. Right, so it's not like this inspirational, which is what I at first thought counteracts some of the good leadership they have. No, it's a -1 net. And they cannot do formations, right? So but it's kind of weird. They can just basically haul around a ton of troops. But they're super cheap. They're defense organizers, which is kind of nice. I don't think they're defense organizer 1. They have to camp out for a kind of long time to raise things up. I mean, if you really had a fort and you wanted to put these in each province and slowly get the PD up, you could. I don't think it's really worth it. Like, you don't even have, like, it's not like gets some amazing kind of PD at 19. Like, there's nothing to write home about here, right? And at 20, we start getting these guys. I don't really think it's worth it. But, you know, it's something you could do. Using these guys to be able to deep raid is kind of cool. One thing I looked at when I was kind of planning for this overview was how tax collector works. And you actually, I was thinking it would function like a fort, where if you can trace income to a tax collector, you can, you know, it works. But no, you actually have to have the tax collector in that specific province. So you kind of need a lot of these guys if you're doing a lot of deep raiding. But the problem with that is these guys are actually hard to get in position unless you have like a Shade Mail Hallberg or something on them, which is like way overkill for this. So you can like deep raid with them, I think. Like, they make fine raiding commanders for chaff hordes, but they're not much more than that, I don't think. So if you're going to do like some raiding and you're worried you might get cut off, this is definitely a bonus. And I mean, they're super cheap. So that's kind of cool. The other thing, as we're talking about these basic commanders, you can get an Enkidu scout in every single province. So for those of you who love watching other people fight wars and stuff, enjoy your 30 gold Enkidu scout, which you can make everywhere. And you can also make commanders everywhere, which is kind of nice. These Enkidu chief, they're Beastmaster +1. Don't think that matters so much, but they're a more expensive normal commander. I would take a 5 gold cheaper commander, but they are less likely to die, just having a boatload of hit points in expansion and stuff. So something to consider. For the rest of the mages, I'm gonna come back. We're gonna talk a little bit about the mages and thugging. But for the rest of the mages or commanders, we have the Enkidu chief, which I already showed you. The scout I already showed you. We have these guys, the headhunter. These guys have a javelin. They're berserk 2, and they're stealthy. These are actually decent thug chassis. Though I would splurge a bit and get these guys, the headhunters. It's a bit more gold, but they have a higher berserk value of 4, which means they can get really good stats. They have a skull club, which is magic if you don't feel like putting other weapons on them. This is a decent thug weapon. But basically, with buffs, these guys can actually thug pretty hard. And there's some like really weird Jedi stuff you can do about like stacking berserk up really high on them if you want to. But that would mean a lot of times you have to like box them in so that the gone berserk stuff doesn't trigger or will let them still sit around and get buffed. But yeah, anyway, it's a fine thug chassis and also has decent leadership, and importantly has stealthy, which is really nice on thugs. And then these, by the way, you can only get in swamps. Unlike the shaman, which we've already talked about some, we'll talk about more. The shaman is foreign recruit. You cannot build them in a province with a fort. All of these swamp things you can build in a fort. And you're probably going to want to fort your swamps. Because If you fort the swamps, you're going to be able to get extra commander points, so you'll be able to get 2 of these bone readers a turn rather than 1. I mean, I'm sorry, you'll be able to get 1 of these bone readers every turn instead of once every 2 turns. Now, these come in a few varieties. They come in an Earth 2, which is great, because Earth 2, we can slam, Strength of Giants and stuff. They come in a Death 2, which is great, Skelly Spam. And then they come in a Water 1, which kind of sucks. They're also Fortune Tellers and Bad Researchers. But these guys are great. You can also make Shade Mail Hallbergs with them. They break you into death. They're super good. They're super duper good. And you're definitely going to want to get all of these. Like early age is an era of gems. There's like gem income's like a much bigger part of the game than in middle and late age. And these guys are going to get you all of those death goodies. So really nice. And the final, well, not the final, because we got to talk about the underwater stuff, but the most important mage really is this guy. You can get these guys, like I was saying, anywhere you build a lab, and they are a 6-path foreign recruit mage that's not slow to recruit. I don't know what to tell you. They're amazing. They're absolutely amazing. They're also really expensive and have a shit ton of upkeep. And this is one of the reasons like can spend so much money. Like they just need so much money. And if you fort up, you can't get these guys anymore. So like late game for them is kind of interesting too in that respect. But and they can also get one of these randoms like and become a 7-path mage, which is pretty awesome. But yeah, for the Earth randoms, it's amazing. It's an Earth 3 mage. Hello, those are great. Nature, it's a Nature 4, which without any gems can get up to Nature 5 with Strength of Gaia, and then can do summon Earth Power, so it has Reinvigoration built in. Hello, that's a super duper strong mage. Water is great, because that means we can do Foul Vapors without any boosters, and for only 1 gem. We can also do Howl trivially, so you can easily, with this nation, do like little thug Howl Foul Vapors traps that you, by the way, I guess we'll start talking about it now. We have really good thug buffing. Not the best, but pretty good. Like we can do Moss Body, we can do Temper Flesh, we can do Iron Warriors. These things are all trivial. We can do Legions of Steel. We have hammers to make thug items. We can make like Lion Pelts, which are super efficient thug items. We can make bracers, which with Legions of Steel, now we're starting to talk about some really serious protection. We make Armor of Knights later. We have really good thug options. And when you combine that, when you say, okay, well, we're going to thug this guy, but he's not going to run in and punch things. We're going to do like Foul Vapors and Howl and summon Earth Power and maybe put Boots of the Messenger on them. So they're really draining a lot of fatigue. You have them on Advance and Cast too. I mean, these guys are ridiculous, but you can thug a lot of things, right? Like, so you can thug these guys if they're getting fluffed. Oh, the other thing is these guys are stealthy, right? So these guys can thug themselves, like especially the water randoms. If you give them like a Wraith Sword, which these guys can forge so they get lifesteal, then yeah, they can do like, Quicken Stealth and Iron Skin and Temper Flesh, and then run in and kill everything. So that's pretty good. The other thing is these guys are stealthy, and so they can be stealthy buffers. So you take the Earth 2s, you sneak them around. Some little party stumbles into like you've snuck under some enemy force, and you magic phase in a Gudu on top of them with Cloud Trapeze. And okay, it's a Gudu, so he can only do air spells. Yeah, but we have hidden there, because we're a freaking genius, we've hidden an Earth 2 mage there, so he's going to pop out. He's, got a Lion Pelt on him, and he's going to do Earth Power, Iron Warriors, Legions of Steel, Temper Flesh, and just cast spells, and he'll spam out skeletons. Meanwhile, your Gudu, he's getting all these spells cast on him from the Earth Mage. He's doing Mist Form. He's doing maybe Flight or whatever, and then he's coming in with like a full kit of gear. And with those buffs from the other dude, he's going to now smash. So there's just a lot of different things you can do with the thugging. Moss Body is, of course, really good on thugs. Quicken Self can be really good on thugs, especially if you have a way, like the Wraith Swords especially are a great way to get rid of fatigue. So they go really well with quickness. we have really good thug paths and we have decent thuggable mages. So you can do really hard, really diverse thug things with these guys. It's not always going to be ultra efficient, though, in terms of like gold or items. I mean, you can do some of the things like, like Iron Warriors, Moss Body, and Temper Flesh and stuff is going to make your dudes really hard to kill, and like regen, right? Like you can do all those things without gems, so they're pretty efficient. But a lot of times you're like needing multiple mages. It's not all like neatly packaged into one mage always, though this guy can kind of do that. So yeah, I mean, you have good thugging on this nation. Let's leave it at that. And you can do a lot of different things. So it's going to be very difficult for people to know what to expect if they're raiding into you, if there's going to be thugs there. And like I said, you also have really good elemental summoners. You have Howl casters. You have Foul Vapors casters. These things are trivial for you to do. There's also another spell before I leave the Shaman that I must talk about. And that spell is Charm. And you get this at Thumb 7. There's not a lot of stuff. There's not a lot of reasons for you to come down here to Thumb 7, right? Not many things here are we going to be casting. You potentially could try to control Vengeful Waters if you get a lot of boosters. But yeah, this is like not great. Okay, there's not much here that we've got. We're not an Astral Nation. We're going to be doing an Enslaved Mind. Growing Fury is important for the late game. But yeah, we're looking through here, not a ton of great stuff, right? The real reason we would go Thumb 7 is for Charm. But once you have it, good luck trying to thug into Sending thugs into once you have Charm is ridiculously dangerous because they're going to steal your thug and your gear. It's basically like the same thing with Pangea. We just have, I mean, in some ways it's, I think, maybe better. Like, we have just such ubiquitous access to this. It's ridiculous. So yeah, this guy, in my opinion, is the shining star of this nation, right? This is what you play around kind of more than anything else. The final thing I'll say about him before we go off is, while his upkeep is atrocious, it's like almost 20 gold a turn. That's a lot, okay? So the upkeep's atrocious. You can look to transform them. That's definitely something you can do. It's worth considering death empowering them to do like transform tart things, to have at least one of those. Especially maybe you would do it if you get like a 10% random that you liked. Definitely something to consider, doing a death empowerment on one of them and just having one tart running around. But in general, they're going to be super pricey. And this is a nation which is going to become upkeep constrained, if you couldn't tell, very quickly, right? Because we don't have sacred troops. We can produce a ton of units. And our best stuff, a lot of it is like, are basically this guy and the Bone Reader aren't sacred. And our troops that we're going to get probably aren't sacred. So anyway, we'll leave it there. Oh, final thing. The nature randoms with the Thistle Maze can cast Mother Oak. So you're a good contender for controlling Mother Oak. And with these guys, you can sight search nature really well. So you should also have really good nature income. Unless you're Grippa. Okay, coming over here. For the Kalulu commanders, basically we have underwater stuff that's aquatic. You can get underwater very easily, but with thugs, right? So you have two guys with Shambler skin. You have them do like Iron Warrior, Moss Body, Temper Flesh, or whatever. And you send them underwater, and they should be able to kill stuff pretty trivially. So you get underwater with thugs, and then we have these guys we can make. Now, why would we want to make like this guy over stuff we have on land? There's not really a good reason. I think this is a trap. Why would we want to make this guy the sage over things we can make on land? Well, he's an adept researcher. Oh my god, something on our nation that can actually research well. So one thing you can do is if you get an underwater fort, you're not going to be able to get these guys out of the water because they're aquatic. You can do it with an amulet of the fish, but like, please. This in some ways is like a greedy move, going after these guys. because you're basically making mages which are not going to be able to contribute to combat power other than the fact they're good at researching. That being said, I think it would be worth putting up one of these. And the other reason it's worth putting up one fort underwater to make some of these is this is your only access to Astral for the nation. So if you didn't luck out on any Astral Indies, you can make these guys and then do arcane probing on your lands and find Astral gems, and then that will be good for you. And then we have the Kalitu Queen. She's not really special. We already had the air water cross path somewhere else. So I think you probably make the other dudes to research. 15 a turn versus 11. Possibly something I'm missing here, but I think these aren't really that great. I will say it does, if you can make a big presence in the water and there's a lot of water on your map, like maybe you have 2 or 3 water nations, you can make a shot at becoming, like, especially if you have a tech advantage, like you can just mass produce troops who are not completely horrible. And if you're a lot better than the underwater players, or you have a much better position, you can use these mages to win and conquer an underwater nation. So like this is significant for that. But I would say aside from that kind of corner case where you're actually planning on conquering underwater with non-amphibious but aquatic troops, which means you have to like get, like make a lot of them have like some stronghold underwater. I think the odds of this happening are pretty low. But assuming you have that, you could potentially conquer an underwater nation. Throwing out that possibility, in my opinion, it's mostly as like a greedy research play you would make these, or to get Astral. Next up, the troops. We've talked about a lot of these, pulled them up at various times. Let's look at this. This is, in my opinion, kind of the core troop. He's got a spear. It hits really hard. He's got human stats except for hit points and strength, which he has a lot of. They're actually very efficient siege engines compared to humans. And they have a little bit better MR and morale. So they're fine, but they're not great. They don't have hats. They tend to get kind of plinked by arrows a good bit. You have this guy who also has a hatchet. He also has a castle defense bonus. He's actually reasonably solid at holding up fort walls. I would consider this guy, he's actually good enough at holding up fort walls where you could consider having a squad of these, like 150 you have on one commander that you gateway around, because 150 of these guys are going to have a massive amount of siege defense. This would not be something you would do in the early game. This would be like something you could do in the late game. Gatewaying a squad of these around to hold up castle walls. This is one of the few units in the game that probably is economical at doing it. That being said, nations which siege well will just disrespect any amount of siege defense you bring. The Enkidu soldiers are actually not horrible. They have a bronze hatchet. They hit pretty hard. Their like I said, the stats of your better troops are not a lot better than your worst troops. The Chosen, we've already looked at these briefly. They're kind of very meh. They're not strong enough, in my opinion, to carry the weight of the nation. In my opinion, sadly, this is a Scales nation in EA. And Scales is rough in EA because there's no money. And Scales nations tend to want a lot of money. We have Hornblowers. You can toss these in. I think they're fortunately the same combat. Oh, they're actually a little slower than these guys. Perfect. So they'll tend to lag behind your troops, which is great. They'll give you a bit of morale. You can toss a couple into a big squad. It's kind of nice. These guys, handle with care. Definitely try to put buffs on them. Do not use them without buffs. I don't think. You can only get one per turn, too. But yeah, if you put buffs on them, they can be worth it. The other things, so the troops we can get here, all the foreign recruit troops we can get in Kidu, these we can really spam out. They're only 2 resources. They have a club that's kind of garbage. The spearmen are a bit better. Basically it's just a better damage type that's not going to get repelled. And they have a shield, which is nice. These guys have no shield. They'll really get tortured by arrows. These guys have a shield, which is nice. These guys have a longbow, which is kind of cool. The Enkidu archers. You don't really have fire access on this nation, but you do have air, and you do have strength of giants. These longbows are not horrible with, and this dagger is not horrible either. So you can do strength of giants and wind guide, and make, have like an archer core, and you can mass these in a hurry. So depending what you're fighting, like if you're fighting Micklin or something, and who's gonna usually be rather vulnerable to archer fire, especially if they're not using eagle warriors, having 100 of these, which you could make in a hurry, like look at this, right? Look how many we can make just on this turn, right? So that's 6, 10, 16, 20, 26, 31. Like we can make almost 100 a turn, guys. Like we can make so many. We probably make 70 a turn, just a middling single cap nation here. Right, so you can make a lot. And then, the Gudu's, wind guide is really easy to do, folks. It's an air 2 with 1 gem. Right, so you just have some air gems, you hand them out one at a time to Gudu. You smack some strength of giants on these guys, and you've got a reasonably respectable archer core. That, because they have strength of giants on them, they're not going to be a complete embarrassment in melee. But they're not going to be great. I think these are fine. I would totally consider using them. But if you're fighting, sacred, like Hellblast Sacreds with good shields, I don't know if this is going to be your thing. But it might. I mean, I think this will be... I kind of just want to see. Well, you're either going to get 1 or 2 bonus damage from Strength of Giants. That's what I wasn't totally sure about. But, whether this is 15 or... I think this is going to jump up to 16 damage. Like 16 damage longbow is pretty good. It's not like it's armor piercing, but most of the stuff in early age isn't super armored. So I think these are respectable. These guys, if you're going for this horde strategy, especially if you have an early timing for a war and you're just going to overwhelm somebody, and you get Strength of Giants on them, maybe some Legions of Steel, these guys are solid. And by solid, I mean they're not good, but you can make a lot of them. And you can just overwhelm somebody. You do need to think a bit about supplying all these guys with food, as I mentioned earlier. The club dudes, shield and a club, I would probably pick the longer weapon here. The other troops we need to talk about. So we've talked about the cap troops. And by the way, most everything expands fine. Like these guys expand fine. These guys expand fine. The cap only units expand fine. I haven't really used them in expansion. The other interesting thing we have are these guys. Now, the sad thing is we can only get them in swamps, but they're berserkers and they're stealthy, which is really nice. These guys take a ton of recruitment points, 23. These guys only take 9. And the problem is because you can only make it in swamps, you can't really make very many of them. So here I built a fort. We can upgrade this fort or something. But, and you can see it's expensive. It was $450 to upgrade it. We would get a bit more like of a recruitment point bonus as we upgrade it. But we're not going to get, what is the recruitment point bonus? We basically be able to get like another 1 or 2 per turn if we upgrade the fort. Before, we were only able to get 2 a turn, so putting a fort here got us up to 4 a turn. These are really nice. They're going to be... If you have a lot of swamps, you can potentially mass them enough where you can really put them in your army, use the javelins on them. That's super nice. If you can't, and you can only get 2 per turn, we would be able to, once we upgrade this fort, get 2 per turn of these. You have to say, okay, well, why would I ever want to get 2 per turn? Well, the answer is they have really high Berserk as well. It's Berserk 3. And that might not be that great. However, you want to use these with your stealthy leaders, which these guys are not stealthy, but you know who are, is these bone dudes. So you take the earth randoms here. You go like this. You put one of these imagine these were the other dudes, the Reaver dudes. What are they actually called? Oh, they are Reavers. So you take these guys, you put them back here, you do Summon Earth Power, and then you do Iron Warriors twice. Which I don't have research. Pretend that was Iron Warriors. All right, you do that twice. 24, 24. I believe this should hit them, but it might not hit both of them. And then you're going to do Temper Flesh or whatever. Pretend this was Temper Flesh, and then you're going to do spells. And he'll just make little skeletons. Things will get close in melee. One thing you could potentially do is you use the Reavers for Guard Commander. Right, so pretend this guy was a Reaver. So he's going to be on Guard Commander. But these guys, who are not Reavers, the Javelin dudes, you can have them here, and you can have them on Hold and Fire. And this should, against most PD types, keep them next to this dude for longer if you're worried, if for whatever reason you test this and Iron Warriors doesn't reliably get on both of them. The other nice thing about them staying here and letting them close is they're going to be right next to this dude who will be able to cast things like Blade Wind and stuff at them. And this Reaver who's on top of this dude will also help smack them in the face. So this can be like a very budget raiding party, I think. It may be you need a bit more oomph. You could provide more oomph, but by maybe like bringing this guy with like a couple more buddies on Hold and Fire closest. And this guy's now... The other thing with Hold and Fire closest is, you know, like I was saying, they're going to stand there longer. You could put these in the same tile. Maybe you can even do like this. Right, so you have two of these. Hold and Fire closest. And you put them right here. This guy's now going to do Iron Skin 3 times. Because he's going to need to get... Or no, 4 times. Because he's going to need to blanket all 4 of these tiles. But I believe, like this, they would be able to do that. And then this guy is... You could put an Earth Gem on for Summon Earth Power if you want. And then he could help with the Iron Warriorsing. Or you could do Summon Earth Power and then do Horde of Skeletons. Or you could just do Horde of Skeletons. And like, this is not a very expensive raiding party. These guys, once you get your fort upgraded, you can get... Oh, we already got a bonus commander point from this first fort, though. I don't know what upgrading it's going to do for us. It's not going to give us a... How many commander points do we have? Oh, 1. Okay. Oh, that guy only costs 1. Okay, I was trying to figure out why I had a bonus commander point. But yeah, I mean, you can get one of these guys a turn, and they're not terribly expensive. So, I mean, this raiding party is not very, or that I was just showing you was not very expensive. Not horribly cheap either, but you know, it'd be pretty effective against most things. You can mix it up by adding in like Earth Elemental Summoners or, you know, whatever it is you think. But that gives you some stealthy, deep raiding options to mix into your thing. If there is a nation, speaking of all of these swamp recruits, that starts in a swamp, like Satis, and you can kill them, and you can get a cap making these, you can make a lot of these guys out of a cap. And that means you can start actually filling out entire armies of these stealthy dudes, which is really cool. So that's definitely something to look to do. If you can pull it off. If you have the Rebirth mod on too, it will help these swamps become more populated, which I think is an improvement to the game. Like, super duper low population swamps are very annoying, and it's especially annoying with Uruk, with recruitment points being limited, because there's nothing you can really do to make it where you get a lot of these out of a swamp in a normal game. So... you can kind of keep an eye out for large swamps that'll have like 5,000 population or something, but yeah. I think we've been through all the units now. We're at 1 hour and 10 minutes too. Yeah. So, okay, we've talked that we can thug, we can do lots of cool things, we can blanket a lot of buffs on a lot of chaff. we can do, if we want to, a lot of like small buffs, like point buffs like Moss Body and stuff on thugs or like super elite troops. I probably need to talk about the summons a little bit. I'll pull those up. All right, so I've got Mod Inspector pulled up now. We can look at some of the summons. There's 2 commander summons, which are both pretty important. One is this guy. So he's very cheap. This is an extreme bargain for an Air 3 mage. 24 gems. This is amazing. He has these daggers, which do extra damage to demons or stun them. He can fly in storms like a storm demon, which is a pretty unique tag. It's pretty cool. And he's sacred, so he'll benefit from your bless. The trick is summoning them. You have Gudu who get up to Air 2, but you can't get to Air 3. The ways to get to Air 3 natively without your god are basically, you can summon this guy who we're going to talk about in a minute. Fairy Queens, you have really high nature access, so you can summon a Fairy Queen, but that's really high in Conjuration. And the other way is you can empower a Gudu, which is something to consider if you find yourself on top of a lot of air gems and you don't have another way to do it. If like you have 12 air income a turn, I would totally consider, and it's like early mid game or something because you got really lucky on air site searching, I would totally consider empowering a Gudu and start summoning these guys, because these guys are going to open up Mass Flight and Fog Warriors. And again, if you think about it, like you're kind of a horde faction, right? And horde factions means you're going to have a lot of units, which means Mass Flight's really good on like factions with a lot of units. You can also toss up Storm with these guys and then do Storm Power with your Gudu and spam out Thunderstrike. So these are really good. They're really, really good. Like this is one of the most efficient commander summons in the game. It's really good. These guys are pretty cool too. They are tricky to summon. You need Astral 5. We're not an Astral Nation, guys. We have one Astral Mage who is an underwater unit who you may not even be able to get, depending on how you expand and stuff. There's a good chance you find an Astral Indie Mage in early age. It's a pretty good chance. But you might not. And yeah, you're definitely not going to get Astral 5. We'll look at the heroes real quick, too. So, that, because I haven't really looked at them. We probably have an Astral hero we can get. I think in the particular builds I'm going to show you for Pretender design, okay, we have an Astral 3. She with the crystal coin and a hat can get up to Astral 5. So, she will be able to break you into this other thing. So yeah, actually these heroes are pretty important. This guy can break you into air to get you summoning the other dudes, the Air 3 mages. And then these two, so Water 4 is kind of cool. This guy could cast Maelstrom for you or something like that. And then I don't know, this guy's immortal. But yeah, this one's really important for being able to break you into being able to summon these dudes, who are super cool. Umu Apkalu. Don't know how to say it, but they're really strong. They are going to be able to give you Staff of Elemental Mastery. You kind of need to figure out a way to get up to Earth 4. You can either do it through blood, like Bloodstones, or if you have Astral Boosters, which you're probably going to be able to make if you can summon these. Like if you get a Ring of Wizardry. Well, not necessarily, but I mean, you could summon this guy, and then this guy can, I think, yeah, he should be able to get you a Ring of Wizardry. With that, you could do a Staff of Elemental Mastery. So he can help break you into some really high magic paths. He's also just an amazing mage. Astral 4 is super duper rare. This is like getting into the territory of like kind of can wish. You kind of need one more, like you might have to empower once to wish, but like really strong mage. Good chassis. He's also a disease healer, an inspired researcher. By the time you get him at Conjuration 8, you're not going to have a lot of researching you need to do. But yeah, it's really good. That being said, I don't know. I might get one of them in a game. The thing is, like, pearls are really valuable. And the most valuable path on this guy is the air path and the astral path. So I would say this guy is worth getting for the astral. If you get him, you're getting him for this astral. If you don't need an astral 4, you know, like, because you can also get a golem for cheaper. Like, if you're just putting up anti-magic or something, if you don't need the astral 4, I might skip him and just get like a golem or something. But if you get him, you're getting him mostly for the astral 4. Or to break into some paths. Aside from astral and then maybe some of these cross paths being useful, the most useful thing is air 3. And air 3 you can make with the other dudes who are super duper cheap, like extremely efficient commander summon, which is actually pretty rare. Like, a lot of times national commander summons are not like ultra efficient for gems. This is probably like one of the most national commander summons, one of the most efficient national commander summons. We'll talk about the units we get. We have a few summons. We have these guys. If you have like Earthblood Deepwell or something, if you went, you can go for a build where you all in on your cap only sacreds and you have like a really strong bless. There's reasons you would want to consider doing that. Like, you have sacred mages you can make in forts that can thug pretty well, and so you can have a bless that's good for your thugs. It's also good for those mages. I think that's like betting on the wrong horse, but I could also see it working. If you go that approach and you have like a really strong bless, these guys are reasonably okay. You get basically they're 3 gems per, and they're sacred with magic weapons that can mess up demons, and they patrol well. I don't know what else. I mean, they have decent attack density. They're fine. They're not great. They're not like an extreme value for 3 gems per sacred, but they're fine. So that's a thing you can get. Then we have these guys who are actually pretty cool. They have Water Breath, which is a 12 range attack, and it's a beam. And they have Flaming Breath, which is a 6 range attack, and it's also a beam weapon. I kind of want to see these in action. I don't think I've ever... Let's actually summon them. Let me go to my little test game here. I haven't actually seen them. I want to see how well they do. Let's have Abyssia march back in here. And we'll have evacuate. And let's summon some of these guys. I forget what the paths they were. Wait, do I have to research? Oh, no, it's these guys. Summon Anzu. Okay, they're hard to summon. They're Air 4. And hang tight. There they are. We got 2 of them. Let's do this. Let's have these guys come over here. We're going to have these guys on hold and attack. Or hold and fire. And let's have this dude back here, and he's going to do summon Earth Power. He's going to do Strength of Giants, Iron Warriors, Iron Warriors, Iron Warriors spells. And this guy is going to do Quickness, Quickness, Quickness. And then we'll have him do Wave Warriors. And it should target these idiots. And on Abyssia's side, let's have this guy get the hell out of here and do a PD dump and see what happens. The fire thing will probably... I don't think they're going to win this, but I just want to see how these guys do. Oh, that is pretty freaking cool, though. These are a cool-ass summon. They are hard to summon. Air 4 is very hard. But it's something you can do. It's one of the things you could put your other dudes to the task of. They're going to run now. So yeah, I would say they perform pretty damn well. So coming back and looking at it, they are 4 gems per. I would say they are worth 4 gems, especially given they have a nice hefty shock resistance, fire resistance, siege patrol bonus. Yeah, I think these are totally worth it. I don't think I would I don't know. I mean, you could even spam them maybe if you had a really high air income. So yeah, I think these guys are legit. The trick is summoning them, right? Because you're basically going to have to summon them with an Oogaloo or whatever that has some other path booster for air, and those are not cheap. But if you have a big air income, these are definitely something you could look at getting more into. So those are good. And then I think the only other summon we have is a Buffalo, which I don't think that bears mention. Yeah, so those are all of the units. Let's do builds. So, as I mentioned midway through the video instead of at the beginning when I should have, you, as the nation of we have access, so we prefer heat scales +1. We're good at recalling God because of our elegists, right? Our God doesn't lose magic scales or our magic skills, magic paths, or dominion points. So like our dominion's never going to go down. We can just call our God back, no problem. So that's great. It makes it worth putting more into a God. There's a lot of things you can do. Some people like the Shadow. You can get the Shadow, and then this guy, I think if you get the Shadow, you're getting him as basically like a, do like reinvigoration something here. You're getting him basically as like a bomb, right? He's pretty cheap. He can, I don't know how well he can expand. I'm pretty sure he can expand some because you can like trample rear. He has recuperation. Maybe that's the mod I have on. I think that's the mod. Yeah, but anyway, he's respectable, right? Because he can also do body ethereal, iron skin and stuff on himself, temper flesh, put a ring of regen on him, which you can make really easily. He can be hard to kill. He can magic phase. And he's got a ton of hit points, so he can suffer a lot of abuse. He's got a normal head slot too, which is kind of nice. And if you take this guy, the nice thing about the monsters is you're not going to want to put a lot of gear on them. The kind of thing is that like the best gods, the gods which are going to be the most hardcore, are usually going to be the Titans. And the thing is that the Titans is you're going to want to put gear on them. And if you put a lot of gear on them, then you don't want them dying. Because even if you call your god back, it's like you lost a ton of expensive gear. So, if your goal is to really just abuse your god, I think you kind of want to get a monster of some kind. And so you could figure out what kind of Shadow's definitely an option. There's a lot of monsters which can be good. And so yeah, if you're planning on just abusing your god, that's a way to go. You get an Earth Snake. There's a bunch of things you could get and just abuse the crap out of your god. This guy can also do like teleport earthquake bullshit. I've seen people using her that way with Shadow. So that's a thing. The other way is you say, look, the thing about calling our god back is really an insurance policy. I'm not going to try to get my god killed a lot. And if you go that way, you say, okay, we're going to lean into a Titan. And I like the idea of a Titan on this nation. The other thing I think that this nation kind of needs is we have pretty good magic path access, but getting really high magic path access, a bit tricky. I don't feel like this is a nation you really want to do like a rainbow one, because rainbows, even though they're cheap and efficient, we don't really have good sacreds except on our mages. You could do like a thug bless, but whatever. You can do elemental fortitude on a lot of your dudes and get some resistances that way, or put gear on them or what have you. So, I think you can... there's a few ways to use... we have good access to gods. And there's a few ways we can use a Titan. One is we get this guy, who has a built-in Vine Shield and Dominion Immortality. You can use him outside of your Dominion, and it's fine for him because you don't you're not really relying on the immortality. In some ways, it's actually bad if he dies in your Dominion because you can probably call him back faster outside. But this guy's a beast. Just having built-in Vine Shield, because Vine Shields break easy, makes him one of the better high-end super combatants. And of course, these are pretty good super combatant paths. Problem is, though, he can't magic phase. So there you go. The other thing to look at is this lady who has good magic phase paths. You could get like a kind of mediocre bless with her. She also has built-in awe, which is pretty nice. And she can fly, which is pretty good. Yeah. She's only size 5, though, so that's something to maybe be cautious of. But she can also cast enlarge on herself if she needs to. Or you could take a larger bless if you want. But she can magic phase. So that's pretty important. She's also a combat caster. But this is one to consider for Titans. The other Titan I would look at is this one. The Iliad of Fate. And this is because basically we can get really high astral. And really high astral is going to potentially break us into a few things. Like it's going to let us do Rings of Wizardry when we come out, which is really nice because that's going to let us climb up air really easily. She's going to be able to summon the whatchamacallit? The guy who needs an Astral 5 dude to summon him. So that's nice. It's going to let us, with that Ring of Wizardry we make, turn around and make Staffs of Elemental Mastery, which is going to be real nice. It's going to break us into really high magic paths. So a lot of nice things from having high astral. The other thing that we can do is in the late game, she can become a real terror. Like you do Ring of Returning on her and you can have a teleporting like Master and Slave Titan. They can be a real terror because like even if you kill her, it's like whatever. She's coming back next turn. The other thing that's kind of cool in late game about a really high magic path Titan, ideally you would go like 9 or something maybe, because you can wish for magical power if you feel like dropping 100 pearls on it, and she'll basically get all the cross paths. And if you wish for magical power, it will not take any individual path above 10, right? So if you go for, I'll show you a build I was thinking about, which is you go get Ethereal. Because we are not an Astral Nation. It's very difficult to get Ethereal on our units. And we have pretty good commanders, like Sacred Commanders we can use to Thug, who are going to be a lot better at it with Ethereal on them. But we go Imprisoned. Go like this. We take all of the production scales, and we just tank Misfortune. So we have like very good scales, good income. You basically play this like scales. When she comes out, she's Astral 10, right? So she can do magic duels like crazy. She can do, that's like, would be early game stuff. If she dies in a magic duel, who even cares, right? Because you just summon her back. She's never losing a path. That is a nice thing because like it is so painful if you're Astral 10 and you lose a path. But yeah, this is probably the build I would take if I played them in multiplayer. It's not like, oh my god, we had Ethereal come online, we're gonna like win from that. Like it's a nice bonus. And ideally I would only take like Astral 9. The other thing you can look to do with this is wish for strength, magical strength, or I forget exactly what it's called, but it's gonna give you a bunch of strength, it's gonna give you some attack and defense, it's gonna give you like 25 or 50 hit points, I can't remember. But if you're really using your god like a maniac, it's worth considering wishing for that. And of course, the other nice thing is just being able to, of an Astral 10, if you're not using them, is just having them cast Wish or some other thing every turn. You could also try to control Nexus or something. But really, High Astral is the best path for breaking you into other things because you can wish for things, or in our case, this is going to be our ticket to Rings of Wizardry and Staves of Elemental Mastery. And with everything else we have, it should be pretty trivial to get really high in all the other paths. The only tricky thing is we don't have a way to break into Blood, really. But I think all the other paths, we'd be able to figure out our way. We also have no fire access so far. But I think everything else we've got pretty well covered, except for like Blood and Fire. Death would be pretty easy because we could do a skull staff and we have a ring of wizardry, and then we could summon a wraith and put both those on him, and then break into liches, and death's easy to climb with astral tin. Fire would be tricky. I don't think. Okay, I just went out and checked real quick. Yeah, we don't get any access to fire. So maybe we have it hidden on an underwater mage. Yeah, no fire access. That's okay. That's something you can live with. I mean, you can break your way into fire too, one way or another. Like, especially if you figure out a way to break into blood. And like, you can wish your way into blood. So, you could wish for blood slaves, right? Or you could, wish for some blood caster. Or you can just be Nick Knight and find blood indies. So, there's a lot of ways to get into blood. But anyway, I think this has a nice mix of things that would. I mean, this would be an eminently useful god, and we have almost not full scales because we've had to dump luck, which had some good heroes in it for sure. And we had to dump a bit of heat, but the heat's fine. We're already heat 1 to start with. So we're not going to get many sacreds with this. By the way, you can make the sacreds. The sacreds expand about just as well as your other things. So you can just make them. They have better morale. And then when this guy comes online, you get some ethereal dudes, which is kind of cool. Yeah, so how do you win the game with these guys? Well, I think that one of the things I like about having this god is it makes the late game easier. So it opens up a lot of things for the late game. But otherwise, you have, like I said, really good earth and nature magic, so you could look to control some globals there. Like, you really need money. And the good thing for you is that earth and nature both have pretty good ways to make money. Like, you can do riches from beneath to help you get some more money. You can do Earthblood Deepwell, and then alchemize and get more money. You can, like late game, the other game-winning spell that you're going to be a good contender for is Gift of Nature's Bounty, which controlling Mother Oak is going to set you up for that. But you could, this is a nation that would really enjoy some money from Gift of Nature's Bounty. And it really takes this horde idea and would turn it up to 11. So that's definitely something to look at. Yeah, I feel like this nation has a really good late mid game. Like, once the big army, like battlefield wide buffs come out, this nation looks really good. The deep late game with like really bad morale and fatigue plays and demons and blood magic, I don't think you're gonna like necessarily be number 1 in the running there. So if you're planning on the game going that far, you probably need to have a plan. But I don't think this nation is a slouch at all. And I would definitely consider going for full anti-greed for the opening build and just outproducing. Like, you may not have the most efficient units, and people might be like, oh, your units suck, you shouldn't make them, just make the mages. No, I think this is kind of like with Bogaroos. Like, okay, you have shit troops, but if you have twice as many troops as everybody else, like, maybe that's okay. I feel if I played this nation, I would learn a lot. So, I think you'll learn a lot too. So play it, your first time. Hopefully you learn something when you play them. And then for round 2 and 3, I think you'll have a lot of takeaways. Like, some of the things that I wonder are like, how good are these? I feel like these longbow units could be really good. If played properly. How to manage like army size and supply, and you probably actually have to like plan the route you're going to take for your army so you don't starve them. When you're declaring war. But I think like understanding some of the timings, how aggressive you can be with like, and also just how well and against what types of things does just slamming a ton of units with Strength of Giants and maybe a few elementals. Like, what types of nations are you going to just steamroll with that? And so like picking out a good matchup for that will change a lot. And then, yeah, these guys have a good late game, guys. Like, it's not amazing, but it's pretty good. Like, charm spammers everywhere, howl casters everywhere, mass protection everywhere. You can do earthquake spam too. There's so much. You can have mass flight. You have really cheap air mages you summon. Just a lot of things. But you need money. And Early Age doesn't have a ton of money. So That's like the conflict, I think, for them. It's how do you get money? Definitely with a nation that gets upkeep constrained so quickly, be looking at the other thing you can do is like transformation and stuff to get rid of upkeep on your shaman. So consider that. But the other thing you want to be looking at, and twice borning maybe some of the Earth Death mages. Another way to get rid of upkeep. But with these like real up nations that can spend so much money so quickly and get upkeep constrained pretty quickly, you're going to want to play, I think, more on the aggressive end. And so I think like understanding this nation and how to play them is understanding some of the timings when you're strong, what are the good matchups, and knowing when to really hit the gas pedal. Because I think with this nation, you want to hit the gas pedal really hard, reasonably early, and then probably chill for a short minute and then hit the gas pedal again really hard. I don't think this is a chill nation. I don't think you play this very chill. But you have to balance that with like the risk of being too aggressive, getting too big, and then getting coalitioned. And, like I said, you're not really on a timer. Like you have a good mid game. You have a good late mid game. You don't have a great late game. You have an okay late game. So, but if you just sit around for any length of time, you get upkeep constrained pretty fast. Especially if you're building your non-cap mages, which are your best ones. Long national overview, boys. Hope y'all enjoyed it. Take care.